I'd like to read a couple of excerpts from A Compromised Generation, Beth's book, and get everyone's feedback on it to see if you believe that this is what your thoughts are on it. First one. Changes to American lifestyles over the last century and a half have significantly reduced contact with our natural outdoor habitat. This means we have lower exposure to soil organisms, like particular strains of beneficial lactobacillus bacteria found in soil. The change in the quality of exposure is likely to impact the types of bacteria that colonize our guts, and epidemiological studies examining the protective benefits of rural living, free from chemical pesticide exposure, tend to support this notion. That's the first point. Second point, recent research has highlighted the importance of vitamin D, a vital immune-supporting hormone acquired through sun exposure, and to a lesser extent, diet, health, and wellness. The second point. Third point, birth and infant feeding. In addition to the lack of time spent outdoors, subtle components of modern life may predispose a child to gut dysbiosis, immune dysregulation, and subsequent chronic illness. Some researchers have proposed the idea that now how babies are born may influence their health as a growing concern. There's tremendous controversy over the importance of mode delivery, how babies are born, concerning long-term health outcomes. In 1965, about 5% of births were done through a cesarean section. By 1975, approximately 10% were C-section. And by 2006, the rate had reached over 31%. And the final comment, another interesting component of American birth culture that may have implications for infant health and wellness is the widespread use of pitocin, a synthetic oxytocin, the natural labor hormone for labor augmentation in U.S. hospitals. A study published in Obstetrics and Gynecology International in 2009 found the administration of pitocin to laboring mothers actually results in decreased glutathione levels in the newest newborn babies. Please, okay. So those 4 points, what your thoughts are on those?
She's absolutely correct on this. This is very important data and information you're giving. There's a French renowned physician that talks about what happens to the overall body and immunity when a baby doesn't come through the birth canal. And there is, in that last stage, certain bacteria you cannot get any other way. And that in and of itself starts the baby off on the wrong foot, on a weakened platform. When you talk about glutathione, the more we study the human cell, which you're made of, every one of us are made of cells, your bones, your organs, your skin, the largest organ. Mitochondria is in every one of those cells. And mitochondria is not only the energy factory of the cell, it's the brains of the cell. And if you don't get glutathione, which if that developed immunity when you're coming out of the mother's womb isn't there, if you start off on the wrong foot, throughout your life you'll struggle to have the brains and the energy source of the cell to function. So why do we get weaker and weaker and weaker generations? This is one aspect of it that's overlooked and never discussed.
There's a couple things that hit your glutathione at that stage too. So there's the pitocin, as you mentioned, which is the labor inducer. Tylenol. So if you think about babies and their exposure to Tylenol after vaccines or before and after vaccines, Tylenol used to be very highly recommended, although now doctors are beginning to pull back because they're starting to understand the correlation. And they're looking at correlation between the Tylenol administration as infants and later development of autism. There's never a one-to-one correlation. There's multiple things that are contributing to autism, but I'm just saying that that's Tylenol depletes your glutathione. And circumcision. And sometimes Tylenol is administered around a circumcision. So there's all these hits to your glutathione that babies get. But going back to the birthing point, our birthing practices is not just about C-sections. C-sections are one component of modern industrial birthing practices. So you have a third of babies born by C-section. You have 40% of women who are test positive for group beta strep right before birth. So it's practiced in American hospitals, standard of care, that every woman who is 2 to 3 weeks before labor, her due date, is swabbed, gets a vaginal swab for a bacterial called group beta strep, which has been in rare cases associated with things like sepsis and meningitis. So there's a concern to prevent sepsis and meningitis in babies. So now the standard of care is to prophylactically administer antibiotics during labor to any woman who tests positive for group beta strep. Think about that for a second. You have 40% of women By the way, I should say 40% of women walking around at any time have group beta strep in their vaginal flora, and it's harmless. But 40% of women who are pregnant are going to test positive for group beta strep and going to be put on antibiotics during labor. That baby will be born exposed to antibiotics at the single most important time when they should not be exposed to antibiotics. So if you take 40% of women with a group beta strep, 30% of C-sections, how many babies born in the United States of America are not receiving antibiotics at birth?
Very few.
Very few, because C-sections require antibiotics too. It's really, one of the things midwives talk about often, because there's many midwives out there who have practices where they have rates of 5 and 6% for C-sections. And very responsible midwives who have hospitals nearby or birthing centers, should anything go wrong, but they still only deliver, they only have 5 or 6% of their deliveries that result going to a hospital for a C-section, but we do over 30%.
Yeah.
Why?
And if nothing else, it sets you up for obesity later in life. This really is studied now, and we know that. And it's I think it's such a natural thing for women to give birth naturally, and of course our lifestyle has made it. Has changed a lot of natural things that we would do, how we use our bodies, how we build our muscles, build our bones so that we're strong enough to have a natural birth. And then the fear that we're put into how painful this will be, how terrible it would be. So we rather want to have a cesarean and just sleep through it, kind of. And then afterwards, we realized that is a horror show. That was not what I thought.
Epidermal.
Yeah, that's not what I would have chosen if I had known what it would be. And, and we have one daughter that takes the first child 48 hours. She's strong as an ox. She did it naturally. And another daughter, just like me, our babies fly out of me. And so they did for her. There's like half an hour, baby's coming. And so, and I think that every woman that has long births, because if she was in a hospital, I know after 25 hours for sure it will be a cesarean. But she gave home birth, and the whole thing is that I think that every woman that has that long-term birth somehow finds the strength and will just persevere.
Yeah.
And
every birth we had, she had. They said the man participated. Yeah, we shake. That's our participation. We pray and shake. But the last one we had, who's the young one, he's not even 20 yet, we had a water birth. Mm. And once you do that, you say, wow, how come this isn't mandatory? Because it's such a nice experience. You're in a womb for 9 months in water. And when you come out, if you come into water, it was very funny when this happened. The midwife was there, who looked and acted like Anna Maria's sister, who had 9 children of her own. I knew we were safe with her. And the little one swam up to Anna's breast. And I thought I had Einstein. I said, oh my God, I have a genius as a child. She let me ran for about 5 or 10 minutes. I was calling everyone on the phone. We have a genius, he just came out. And she said, they all do this.
Yeah, and that's a gift to give birth in the water, because the water is 100 degrees and you're just, it's an amazing therapy. And of course it's been used for so many years. And a lot of hospitals, if you do get birth in hospitals, can have water births for you. And maybe that's more comfortable for you, where you do have the doctors and nurses available in a birthing setting. And the birthing time, of course, should be that joy. You should have, if you can have husband, if you can have your other kids, if you have, or you have your parents, I think you give them a gift to see this baby be born. Usually you come into hospital and they're like one person, that's it. And the rest of us are like,
it's like a concentration camp.
We want to be in there. And it's, it is a time where we really don't care of anybody seeing us naked, because we came this way, we go this way, right? And the baby is naked. It's so funny. Our daughter was 11 when the little guy came out, and she could not believe it that he came in one piece.
She thought we assembled it.
Because she's never seen a baby being born. Like, one piece, like, he's ready. I said, yeah, for 9 months, you have learned how to taste things, you're hearing things, you're seeing things, you're tasting things. I mean, all of this is done. You're coming out, you're ready to go. But it's magic. It really is magic. And we should make that process as beautiful as we can, and not a horror show, not tell people how terrible it's going to be and you better just sign up for cesarean. There are a lot of women that need that. Save it for them, you know. But if you have a midwife that is trained in breech and trained in a lot of things, they can help. Like our son, the last week, he decided to move his feet down and head up. And then I just laid on the slant board. After a minute, he got the idea, and he twisted and put his head down like he should be. So midwives know all these tricks.
He's a break dancer now.
Yeah. So, you know, you need to have that kind of person with you, and a doula that knows and that takes you through.
How many of you have noticed after people have babies and they get, their hips become overweight and it's almost impossible for them to lose the weight? How many of you know why that is? They're not breastfeeding. That when the baby suckles in the breastfeeding, the cortisols go down, the hormones come up and actually eat the fat away. And how many mothers breastfeed for the 1.5 to 2 years that are mandatory to get the body's immune system and the bioterrain straightened out? Less than 5% in America, 3% are immigrants. It's only 2% natural-born Americans that do this, breastfeeding for as long as it should. And most of you have been convinced that you're heroic if you breastfeed for 2 weeks. 6 months, you know, they should give you a Nobel Prize at that point. And you know, in other parts of the world, they're 3, 4 years. We have a friend in California that didn't let anyone know she was breastfeeding till they were 5. I said, is the kid going to be taking dates in your breastfeeding? And let me tell you, this is a very healthy child.
I'm really glad you mentioned the circumcision, because I think that's an unnecessary trauma, and I know that there's religious reasons for doing it, but it is a trauma, and if, you know, we're against it happening to young girls, and if somebody wants to do it, they should make that decision when they're 18. I've been thinking about making a bumper sticker, save the foreskins.